Well, hello everyone. Happy Friday. A very somber fantasy football today. And I'll ask the Magic 8 Ball, should we even bother playing fantasy football anymore?
Oh, look at this. Now look who's a little sad and melancholy after a football game. You used to get on my case like 2 weeks ago because I would come to the podcast and I would be frustrated by the events of the week. Come on, Dave. It's going to be a great week. It's fantasy football. Yeah. That was you.
The
That's me
Magic 8 Ball
impersonating
said,
you.
yes, you should keep playing. The Magic 8 Ball has been on fire.
Really has. That's the best investment you've ever made.
It's very good. Dave takes like a 10-game slate, focuses on 5 injuries, and it's like, this is terrible, though. I mean, Mark Andrews likely out for the season. Joe Burrow, don't know how long he'll be out, got the wrist injury. And, basically to sum it up, but we'll make the most of it, and we'll tell you who to replace Mark Andrews with. We're also going to preview a bunch of games today as well. And today's episode is presented by Salesforce. Baltimore 34, Cincinnati 20, and the Bengals getting a late touchdown. Jamar Chase caught that touchdown. He had 1 catch before that, and then he ends up with 12 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets. All right, let's start with the Bengals side of the ball. It was shaping.
We have to.
It would look like it was going to be a really good game, and Burrow,
Yes.
Burrow to Mixon, nice connection. But Dave, what are your thoughts on the Bengals if Joe Burrow misses time and Jake Browning, who threw for 68 yards on 14 attempts, it takes over?
I mean, didn't you think Jake Browning looked just like Joe Burrow until he threw the football? I honestly, I was impressed with Jake Browning, moving around the pocket. I thought that mobility was surprising. And then when he throws, it looks like he throws in slow motion. It was really not great. And I think he's a smart quarterback, made good reads, just clearly not the same type of arm. Very worried about the production for everybody involved for however long Joe Burrow is out. That goes without saying. I wonder if they'll lean into the run game a little bit more. This could end up being a decent thing for Joe Mixon. Mixon was getting a good amount of work anyway. I think you downgrade expectations until Burrow comes back. Hopefully Burrow comes back.
Jamie?
I mean, look, they got a mini bye, so hopefully, we'll see what the MRI results suggest or show. And then we'll see what, how long this could be out. He could be out, but it's a tough schedule coming up too, starting with Pittsburgh in week 12. So you got to be concerned across the board. You wonder how long T. Higgins will now be out if in fact the Bengals continue to fall out of playoff contention because he's headed to free agency. Does he want to come back on a less than 100% hamstring and deal with a backup quarterback? So to me, he's probably the biggest concern, but I hope that, the system helps and that they trust Browning and that they just let him throw the ball and then pepper Chase with targets. Remember, he's always open. Well, if you're always open, help your receiver out, help your quarterback out.
He wasn't in this game.
No, but I mean, Baltimore, aside from the 2 huge games he had for the last 3 games, they played him tough. So, I didn't expect Burrow to have a monster game. And I was a little concerned about Chase. Not that you're benching either one for the most part, but
yeah.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this isn't going to be a long-term injury for Burrow.
I mean, I think it'd be bad for Mixon, though, I got to tell you, because Mixon is really benefiting so much from the healthy Joe Burrow. He keeps scoring touchdowns. Efficiency was great yesterday. And I've seen this story. The first half of the season, when Burrow stunk, Mixon wasn't really very good. I mean, he didn't really have any, games where he popped. He couldn't score. He scored 1 touchdown in his first 5 or 6 games. And now he's scoring basically every week. 1 touchdown in his first 6 games. But you know what? We'll react to it when we get more news on Joe Burrow. On the other side of the ball, Jamie, what's your take on the Ravens with Mark Andrews leaving on the opening drive? And he had 2 catches on the opening drive and, got down inside the 5-yard line. He's got the ankle injury, likely out for the season here. And I say likely, Isaiah likely might be someone that fantasy managers could desperately look at, although he's been terrible in both games that Mark Andrews missed or barely played. But give me your take on the Ravens offense going forward.
It's obviously worth speculating on likely come Tuesday. You can't do that now. So the one somewhat silver lining for both these injuries is that it happened on Thursday. You can still pick up guys that might be available on waivers, and we'll talk about that if you want to. But there are some players out there that you can, at least get ahead of to, beat the rest of your league. But look, Lamar Jackson showed you he can still survive without Mark Andrews. I don't think it's going to be something that craters his fantasy season. It's not like, for example, if another certain high-profile quarterback lost another high-profile tight end, that might be disastrous. It was nice to see the receiving core step up. Zay Flowers should have had a touchdown. That was a terrible holding call on Odell Beckham. And Beckham, look, he's continuing to improve. And, go back a few weeks to things you heard out of Baltimore, that they wanted to get him going. And, then you get the garbage time touchdown from Tyler Huntley. You get another touchdown last week, and now you get a 100-yard day today. And hopefully his shoulder injury is okay. So I think the receivers get a boost. Really, I would just be looking at Flowers and Beckham at this point. I know Bateman scored. Aguilar's touchdown was, fluky. And then the running backs, clearly. I mean, Gus Edwards has just been so consistent in finding the end zone. So they'll lean on him more as well. And hopefully a little bit more for Keaton Mitchell. But yeah, it's likely he's got the target now on him. And hopefully it will be something that can benefit. So if you have an open roster spot, even if you not the Mark Andrews fantasy manager, not a bad player to speculate on.
So just to back up what Jamie was saying, I kind of decided this morning to look into the role that Mark Andrews had been playing and who's most likely to take over, not necessarily just the tight end role, but the opportunities that Andrews is leaving behind. Everybody knows that Andrews plays in the slot a lot. Low ADOT, it was 7.3 yards. He has only one game this year, whereas ADOT was more than 7.8 yards, 20% target share. But in the red zone, he had a 32% target share going into week 11. So who replaces that? And I looked going into week 11. I didn't count last night's game. Zay Flowers had the highest red zone target share at 24%. Odell behind him at 17%. I agree that likely is a great ad just to see what happens. I don't know if he's absolutely going to replace every target that Mark Andrews has had. But the other thing to keep in mind is what happens when the Ravens get into the red zone. It's Gus Edwards. And you can almost pencil him in for at least 10 fantasy points, PPR or not, every single week, because the dude just keeps finding ways to play near the end zone and then enter it with the football tucked neatly into his arm. I think that they'll continue to be very run focused. I thought it was a good game for Lamar too. And the sad thing is, like, if you started him, obviously it was great. He was a low end QB1 for me. I should have ranked him much higher. But if Joe Burrow had stayed in the game and played, it could have been a much bigger game for Lamar, because it could have been a back and forth shootout type of matchup.
Yeah. And Gus Edwards, of course, keeps stealing touchdowns from him. And Gus Edwards had 2 touchdowns in this game. And now for Gus, what is that? That's how many touchdowns in his last?
I think 9 in his last 5. 7 in his last 5.
That's wild. He had let's see, 3, 6, 7, 9 in his last 5 games for Gus Edwards. He's Jamal Williams right now from last year, but with not quite as many carries. I mean, it's still a little bit dangerous here. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's had 11 carries, 12 carries, he had 5 carries a few weeks ago, but he has his role and he's very good at it. Beckham is 35% rostered. Is he going to be potentially the most added player in leagues next week?
He'll be among them. I mean, let's see what happens coming off this week. You're going to see a lot of clearly tight ends being added, because not just the Mark Andrews fantasy manager, there'll be some people in leagues trying to add tight ends and then trade whoever they may have to the Mark Andrews fantasy manager. But yeah, I mean, look, Beckham again has been building towards something and starting to show. And look, we saw it with the Rams, right? It took a little bit of time, and when he was added midseason, and then he started to look awesome toward the end of the year. We're seeing something similar.
Yeah. Well,
shouldn't we talk about this? The tight ends that you can add now if you have
sure.
Mark Andrews. Like, Jamie, I know you tweeted something out. Logan Thomas was on your list. Tyler Conklin was on your list. Who am I missing?
Luke Musgrave. Again, these are guys that, again, you don't want to be in these situations, but the players that are out there now that you can drop somebody that's on the end of your bench. So I just looked at our leagues, and we usually go right around the 65% roster threshold. So Logan Thomas is at 70%, so could be available in some 10-team leagues. And when we talk about this on Tuesdays, we say the shallow leagues. Luke Musgrave's at 57%. He's been playing better of late. Freiermuth coming off IR, 47%. Jonnu Smith on his bye. We know he's been up and down, but still been productive at times, 41%. Cade Otton has tailed off a little bit lately, but 37%. And Tyler Conklin, to me, is probably the best of them, aside from Logan Thomas. His last 2 games have been very solid, better in PPR than non-PPR, but 36%. So I stopped there. There's, Michael Mayer is out there if you want to, speculate on him. If Aiden O'Connell starts to look for him a little bit more, there's some guys, but Hunter Henry's another one, but I think you just look at the players who have done something or have the chance to do something. Those are the guys I'd be looking at right now.
Yeah, and for Conklin, it's not just the last 2 games. He has a couple of duds in there, but I think it's 4 of his last 6 games. Conklin has more than 50 yards. So he's definitely going to have some bad games, and he may not score a touchdown for the rest of the season because I'm not joking. I mean, the Jets just don't throw those. But in PPR leagues, Conklin can give you catches and yards, hopefully on a somewhat regular basis. There are 2 other players.
Who might his quarterback be in the fantasy playoffs?
Yeah, it's true. And I would say, look, Dallas Goedert 77% rostered. So you might be able to pick him up, even if you don't have an IR spot, and stash him. Darren Waller has to miss 2 more games, then he's eligible to come back. I don't know if you really want him, but he's available in a decent.
I believe the latest reports that he's still going through the recovery process of his hamstring injury.
Okay. So those are 2 guys. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how appealing he is at Darren Waller is anyway.
Do you want some quarterbacks for Burrow?
Sure.
Are there any? Or are these just guys to trade for?
No, there's one again. Like Tyler Conklin would be the prize of the group. Again, it's not great, but Gardner Minshew gets Tampa Bay next week, and we've seen what this Bucs secondary looks like. He's 30% rostered, but again, the sliding scale. Jordan Love 72%, so similar to Logan Thomas. Stafford gets this is just for week 12. So Love gets the Lions on Thanksgiving. Matthew Stafford gets Arizona next week, 67% rostered. So hopefully his thumb injury holds up. That's a good matchup. Derek Carr, we know he's been good for the most part over the last month. He gets Atlanta next week. Hopefully his shoulder's okay.
And then
Will
Detroit.
Levis, if you want to trust him, gets Carolina. That could be a game where he's throwing with some success. Yeah. And then Gardner Minshew again gets Tampa Bay. So it's not bad at that position from a desperate scenario if you're looking to replace Joe Burrow right now.
No, and Carr actually has 2 good matchups in a row. So you could look at that. Yeah, for sure. I was going to bring him up.
Well, he's got Atlanta, Detroit, and Carolina, and then the Giants.
So that's 3 out of 4 good matchups. Carolina, everyone just runs on them. Hopefully the Cowboys will this week. Okay, that would be. I had a couple of emails I was going to read from David in a Canadian city with a really, really tall tower.
Goodness. Tall tower. Windsor.
Okay. I lost Burrow and Andrews.
Oh,
he has Kyler. So he's gonna. I have 2 offers from the same manager. Either Kyron Williams for Kincaid or Rashad White for TJ Hawkinson. And he still has Eckler and Swift.
Kyron for Kincaid is a done deal for me.
Okay. All right. And then if you have some quarterback depth, like our guy James here, he traded Josh Dobbs for Dalton Kincaid, and he has Tua and Stroud. So
isn't it funny like how people are like vultures, like the minute the injury happens, like you start getting
I love it. I love it.
That's how it is. That's how
I'm playing against one of our former colleagues, George Sedano, in a league, and I was like, wow, he had a big night last night, and I was like, oh, he had Burrow and Andrews.
No.
I thought it was just one guy that he had, like he had Lamar or something when I saw this.
Yeah. The dedicated fantasy managers, they act fast. Jamie got one of my texts last night in the wake of Joe Burrow's injury in our dynasty league.
Dave, did you check my my text message to you?
No, but I did check the message that you sent in the live stream private chat.
All right, Dave is going to give. I forgot to tell Dave that he has to give us a player that he loves this week. We're going to get that in just a moment. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today. Join us for our mailbag this afternoon, live at noon Eastern on Friday, or of course you can listen to it the next day. But join us live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning for our live chat, where we answer your questions for an hour and a half, basically, and it's a lot of fun. And I am sorry, I forget. HQ is at 10 o'clock, right? CBS Sports HQ Fantasy Football today, 10 o'clock on Sunday.
Yep.
We do not have any European games this week, so I can't sing Game of the Week in any other language. And I just realized that I have no idea what the Game of the Week is. And
that's BS. You know exactly what the Game of the Week is.
I'm not doing Eagles Chiefs. I don't know how to organically bring up Eagles Chiefs without you being tipped off. So I'm going to have to go off the board. I'm going to have to.
You're 100% going to put the music on when we talk about. You're going to do it right now, aren't you?
No. I didn't have anything planned. I'm going to have to figure it out on the fly. News and notes. Josh Allen mentioned not getting bored with the stuff underneath. So I think he's kind of saying he's been forcing it downfield. More good news for Gabe Davis. Running back. I swear this is the biggest news story I found all week. It terrifies me. I hate it. Jahmyr Gibbs. I talked about this with Dave last night on the live stream, which was wacky. Jamie, you have to see. Dave, please do it. Like, please style your hair.
No, it's done. It's over.
Dave gave himself like very weird hairstyles last night. It was amazing. But Jahmyr Gibbs was on his little player podcast, and he said that he was supposed to come off the field near the goal line, and David Montgomery let him stay on. And I hate that, Jamie. That he wasn't. They were supposed to go back to that stupid stuff. What is that? Does that bother you as much as it bothers me?
It's bothersome. So maybe he gets 1 touchdown as opposed to 2. Like they're gonna be interchangeable in certain areas. The majority of the goal line touches are clearly gonna go to Montgomery. You hope that the majority of the passing down work goes to Jahmyr Gibbs. I think this is just gonna be one of these offenses that has the potential for both running backs to have big seasons. And so go back to last year when Swift was at his best and Jamal Williams was still scoring touchdowns. Like
Bingo.
That's what you're hoping for, is that there's the 2 guys doing great things. So Montgomery, where we were looking at him as maybe a top 10 running back, okay, maybe now he's just a top 15 or top 20 guy. And Gibbs still has the potential to be a top 10 guy.
The difference is I think this year's version is better. It's like on steroids compared to last year's version, for sure.
Yeah. Well, who would you rather have, DeAndre Swift, this year's DeAndre Swift, or this year's Jahmyr Gibbs?
It's a little reactionary to say just Gibbs is that much better. I think Gibbs' ceiling is higher, but I think Swift is safer. They're so good at running the ball.
Both teams are.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look, Gainwell's taken a little bit away from.
Oh, he's sharing with a guy named Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I was gonna say on the tush push.
Right. I have Gibbs higher on the trade chart, but I think a little bit of that is because public perception is like mega love for Jahmyr Gibbs right now.
Mega love right now. David Montgomery says he feels the best he's felt in his career, and he feels like he's playing his best football. I agree.
He's saying that the week before he plays his former team.
I would just like to.
He's going to romp the Bears.
Yeah, that's a good point. Alexander Madison is progressing, still in the concussion protocol, but I'm getting the sense that he has a decent chance to play this week.
Yeah.
So be aware, Ty Chandler managers. Deontay Foreman was limited, and Khalil Herbert practiced in full. So it looks like Herbert's going to play. Being limited is good for Foreman, but we'll see what happens there. They're facing Detroit. Dameon Pierce missed practice. Devon Achane will play. Antonio Gibson still has not practiced. He has this toe injury, and he's facing a team that gives up the fewest receptions to running backs in the NFL. Saquon Barkley said that loyalty means nothing. So you do, again, have to wonder if he's going to play it out all year. I feel like they kind of owe it to him to let him sit toward the end of the year. But we'll see. It's a lot of bad stuff going around with the Giants. A lot of bad media headlines anyway. And Mike McCarthy said he might give Rico Dowdle more touches.
You think?
Yeah. Pick him up.
Please.
Justin Jefferson was limited. Have you ranked him yet?
No, I just hope we don't get a Sunday night workout before the game situation, because that'll be frustrating. Yeah.
I think it'll be good for ratings for us. I think we'll get more people on the stream, more people watching HQ in the morning if they need to know what to do with Justin Jefferson.
Oh, well, look, you're getting a lot of questions still, even if he's guaranteed to play, but it makes it a lot easier to know if he's going to play.
Dave, is Puka Nacua playing hurt?
Sounds like he's got something going on where he's not at 100%, but still expected to play against Seattle on Sunday.
Okay. Robert Woods and Nico Collins practiced in full, but Noah Brown missed practice again. Keenan Allen says he's going to play. He has a shoulder injury. KJ Osborne likely to play this week. Deontay Johnson back at practice. That was good. And Jerry Jeudy showed up on the practice report with a hip issue. Oh, that was a terrible sentence for me. Tight end. I'm only bringing this up. This is my Dalton Schultz apology tour. Okay.
That was so funny.
Dalton Schultz practiced in full. I forgot he existed yesterday.
No, Adam goes at the end of the Texans Cardinals preview. He goes, and sit the Texans tight end. So I was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
And then it took me 10 seconds to figure out what I was missing. I still couldn't figure out that Dalton Schultz was on the Texans and playing really well.
I mean, were you thinking about Tegan Quitterano?
There was a few comments in the chat of, wow, why are you disrespecting Brevin Jordan like that?
Yeah, exactly. Donald Parham practice. I am starting Donald Parham in a league. I do think he's a decent sleeper if Everett's out, which looks like it will be the case. Everett hasn't practiced, but it's not a huge endorsement. Hayden Hurst missed practice. Pat Fryermuth practiced in full, so he looks like he's going to play.
What's the golfer's favorite sandwich?
The
Parham sandwich.
You got it.
Oh, I thought you were making a sand wedge joke for the golfer.
That would have been better than what I actually did. I am still on my quest to originate a good dad joke before the end of the year.
The biggest defensive injuries would be Jimmy Ward, safety for the Texans, still missing practice. Giants dealing with some players in concussion protocol, Dory Jackson and Kayvon Thibodeau. Good news for the Packers, Quay Walker and Jair Alexander looking good. And Minkah Fitzpatrick and Keanu Neal, both safeties for the Steelers, still missing practice. Okay, that would be our news and notes. Dave, who is a player that you love this week?
Love is a strong term to use with Devin Singletary, but I think he's earned our attention and certainly should be in our fantasy lineups in a week where 4 teams are on bye. A lot of good running backs are not playing this week, and he just had 150 yards and 30 carries against the Bengals. This is a Bengals run defense going into last week's game that allowed under 3.5 yards per carry against the Seahawks, against the 49ers, and against the Bills. And he didn't do it alone. The left side of that offensive line for the Texans did a really good job of making space for Singletary. And he's always had good agility.
And that's the game of the week. Dave, the game of the week. The Texans and the Cardinals.
You just decided this right now. There's no way you went into this thinking the Cardinals is the game of the week.
I love this game.
I do too, but there's a damn Super Bowl rematch on Monday night. That's not the game of the week?
It is the game of the week, but I had to throw you off, Dave. Like, it's not fun when you know what it is.
So this is the second best game of the week. And you waited like 30 seconds after I was going into Singletary.
I was a theater major in college, Dave. I know drama. Okay.
Was that your major?
It was my second major after I dropped economics because it was too hard. And I had a class at 8 a.m. that I didn't want to go to.
Dad must have been so bummed.
Broadcast journalism was my major. Theater arts was my second major.
Copying your brother again.
I sold tickets at the box office basically to get my degree. So, yeah. All right. Devin Singletary. Thank you, Dave. We're going to take a break. When we come back, one question for each game, and we will beat the waiver wire, and we will preview the games. I think you know the drill at this point. We'll be right back. All right, one question for each game. Chargers at Packers. Starter sit Aaron Jones. I believe the longest carry of the season for Aaron Jones is 11 yards. Starter sit Aaron Jones.
That's bad.
Must start guy this week.
15 or more fantasy points to a running back in 6 of the Chargers' past 8 games. 12 or more PPR points to a running back in all but 1 game this year. I can't get away from Aaron Jones.
I almost made him the start of the week.
A.J. Dillon's also had, I think, 9 PPR points in 3 of his last 4 games. So if you're in a dill pickle, you can go with A.J. Dillon as a bye-week replacement running back.
I'm trying to think of a funny name for the struggling trio of Barkley, Pollard, Walker. If anyone in the chat has a good nickname for that, the tree, like the whatever.
Walker?
Something. Yeah, I know.
Why is Walker in there?
I know we had 2 horrible games in a row, and then he had the 60-ish yard touchdown catch. I know, but he's kind of making fantasy managers nervous, right?
Not like Barkley and Pollard are making fantasy managers nervous.
Yeah. All right. Tampa Bay at San Francisco. Rashad White or Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Ken Walker.
The other guy's over White.
White makes me nervous. Very tough matchup.
Somebody has a very look at this nickname. No, can't do that. Nothing with profanities. Seattle
Why not?
Oh gosh, no! I could get fired, and then
Can you just say it?
I'd have to apply to theater jobs with my degree.
The bleep bags.
Bleep bags, yeah, the crap bags. All right, but
That's real creative.
I shouldn't gloss over Rachaad White too much here. He's on a hot streak for sure. You guys like?
Yes, of course. I think you can still start him over Pollard in full PPR.
I wouldn't, but I think you still start him as the number 2 running back in PPR.
The 3 fail Migos. Okay. We'll get something. Seattle at the Rams. Your confidence level in the wide receivers in this game. Seattle at the Rams.
Starting both Rams guys without hesitation. And I think still starting both Metcalf and Lockett as well, with JSN as a high-end number 3 receiver.
I do like Lockett more than Metcalf.
I mean, are you basically expecting Kupp and Puka to be must-start receivers rest of season as long as Stafford is healthy?
Kupp, yes. Puka, probably.
I would like to see both guys play well together.
Swoon from Puka, but I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt.
Okay. Let's see. Chicago at Detroit. Are you starting the big 3 in the Chicago passing game? Fields, Moore, Kmet.
Moore and Kmet, definitely. Fields, I think it just comes down to what you're looking at your quarterback spot. I hope. Look, he's got the ability to play well here. I think the Lions defense at home is going to be a little tough for a lot of teams. As long as he's using his legs, I think he'll be okay.
He did that in his 2 games against the Lions last year, over 100 rushing yards in each game. We haven't seen him run like that yet this season. And I kind of have a problem with Fields in his first game back, whether it's from injury or to start the year. Like, we've kind of seen this trend from him of not playing well in his first game back. But I can't help myself. I think that he's got upside to be at least a decent fantasy quarterback. Not a top 12 guy for me, but I still think he's start worthy.
I have to really evaluate. How do I love the Texans-Cardinals game as much as I do? I think I just...
Because you loved the start of the week song and getting me on it. So now you're going to have to defend that.
Yeah.
Because you didn't take the low hanging fruit. It's a great game, though. It should be a great game. It should absolutely be a great game.
Well, I don't want to give too much credit to the Cardinals. They are a 2-win team after all. They're 5-point underdogs.
But it's a different team with Kyler Murray under center.
It's different offense for sure. I just, it's still like the Texans probably should put up a ton of points.
And didn't we talk about this yesterday, Kyler Murray, and how he looked in the game?
Yeah, we talked about it last night.
Yeah. Dallas, go back and watch it on YouTube.
Dallas at Carolina. It's Tony Pollard week, right?
I think it is.
You have him as a top 12 running back?
I do.
Jamie? Yeah, I don't. I'm nervous.
Should we see what Magic 8 Ball? Tony Pollard going to have a big game? Ooh, prospect good. You remember that. The 8 Ball's been pretty good. Giants at Washington. Does the Washington passing game have a big day?
Yes.
I don't think it'll be like it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I think it'll be kind of okay. I think McLaurin will get good numbers. He usually does against the Giants. He might be the only one.
He always does against the Giants. He's got 70 yards or more in every game that he's played against them. That's 8 games. He's averaging 17. He's averaging 18.5 PPR fantasy points against the Giants in his career. That is 8 games. He's been good in all 8 of them. I can't get away from him, but they have not had... The Commanders are 9-point favorites. They have not had an easy win this year. I think they had an 8-point win. So they are the most pass-heavy team in the NFL, at least in terms of rates. Most pass-happy team in the NFL. Very curious to see how this game plays out here.
280 and 2 for Howell.
Yeah. Giants defense is really falling apart, though. The team. Yep. All right, let's beat the waiver wire real quick, and then we'll get into all the games, starting with Chargers and Packers. Rico Dowdle is definitely somebody that you want to put on your radar and put on your roster if you can. Jamie mentioned a lot of those quarterbacks for next week. Gardner Minshew, Jordan Love, Derek Carr. They have matchups. Look, you don't have to necessarily beat the waiver wire for next week. There are no teams on bye. We have 3 Thursday games. We have a Friday game next week. Patriots DST is there at the Giants next week if you want to stash them. Still obviously think Demario Douglas has some appeal. Josh Downs is 68% roster. Take a look and see if anybody dropped him. We mentioned the tight ends, Logan Thomas, Hunter Henry, Pat Freiermuth. Jamie, who am I missing? Sorry.
Tyler Conklin.
Tyler Conklin, that's right. Yeah, I don't know who else. You guys have anybody else other than some handcuff running backs right now?
No, but one of
Rondale
those
Moore.
handcuff running backs is Dowdle, and I think that he's absolutely worth stashing just to see what his role becomes this week and maybe beyond.
Yeah, Quentin Johnston's 38% rostered. Rondale Moore, as Jamie just said, 21% rostered.
What about Jalen Guyton?
Yeah.
Like if
5%.
Quinn Johnson isn't going to connect, Guyton might.
It's funny because they both had 4 catches.
They
had the
did.
same amount of receptions and both scored.
Yeah, but
Guyton
more
looked a
targets.
little better, and he played a lot too. It wasn't like he was only a part-time player last week.
He's also the slot guy. You know, he and Allen play in the slot, whereas Quentin Johnston plays entirely on the outside. And I think the Packers actually give up a ton of production out of the slot. Either that or they give up like none. I have it in my notes. Let's see. Packers, where are you? All right, I'll tell you later. Well, we're going to preview that game now. I'll do it right now. Here we go. Chargers at Green Bay. Stat of the game. Here, maybe I confused it with, yes, I did. All right, I know what happened. Stat of the game. I figure, look, you pretty much know who you're starting in this game. It's we'll have some questions about Jordan Love. We've already talked about Aaron Jones. Let me just give you a reason to take a look at the Packers wide receivers. They're low-end starters, I know. But Romeo Doubs, he keeps catching touchdowns. Romeo Doubs is 5th in the NFL in red zone targets and green zone targets. All 6 of his touchdowns have come in the red zone, 5 of them from 8 yards out or closer. So, you know, it's obvious, like you don't want to rely on touchdowns, but maybe it's not as fluky as it seems because he's getting targets where it counts. And the Chargers allow the most yards per catch to wide receivers out of the slot. And Jaden Reed lines up in the slot on 77.5% of his snaps. So this is not one of those stat of the games that's going to motivate you to get someone in your lineup, but I thought it was.
Reed's been doing some good things lately. And, you know, look, Christian Watson has not. And like you said, it's been more touchdowns than anything else for Romeo Doubs. And so Reed has been building towards something and maybe starting to have that rookie second half breakout coming. So, yeah, I don't mind picking him up and potentially starting him in deeper leagues where you're starting 3 receivers or as a flex. I'm starting him in one 10-team league where we start 4 receivers. So, you know, I'm happy with his production. I'm happy with his opportunity. So there could be some big games coming.
And the obvious connection between them all is Jordan Love. And I thought Love played mostly well last week. The consistent thing that I've seen with Love going back to the preseason is that he's late on throws, and that's just something that's going to end up being a killer for him. But the production's been pretty good for fantasy, and don't hate him as a bye week replacement this week and maybe a quarterback to target in a trade or pick up off the waiver wire if you're worried about losing Burrow. I agree that Jaden Reed is the best receiver for Green Bay moving forward, though. I think the kid just makes some great plays.
I'll give you 2 more beat the waiver wire guys, depending on the size of your league. Rashid Shaheed and A.T. Perry.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Michael Thomas, who knows how long he's going to be out. Shaheed saw most targets he's had in a game last week. Some of that had to do with Jameis, but A.T. Perry's going to get some more opportunities too and had his first taste of action and look good.
So Justin Herbert, all right, here's like a bold prediction that I don't believe, but I guess wouldn't shock me.
It's okay. That's what we do with bold predictions every year anyway.
No, I would never, ever, ever advise anyone to do this, but it wouldn't shock me if Jordan Love outscored Herbert. I mean, it would surprise me, but Herbert has been pretty matchup dependent this year. And the Packers give up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, whereas the Chargers are horrible. And I don't see it happening. I wish I hadn't even brought it up like that. I don't want to be responsible for that take. But the matchups are very different. So do you consider Justin Herbert a must start this week when we have really good quarterback options? We have Stroud and we have Kyler and we have Goff in a great matchup. We have Fields in a good matchup. And let's start with Herbert. Is he a must start this week?
I wouldn't be looking to bench him. I certainly would not be looking to make a roster move to add another quarterback if Jordan Love was available. But yeah, I would start Purdy over him. I would start Dobbs over him. And I would start Stroud over him if you're looking at guys that were picked up at some point during the season.
And Dave's higher on him. Dave has him 5th. Jamie has him 10th. Heath has him 8th.
I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I want Herbert in my lineup for high-scoring games.
Yeah, it's not clear that the Packers are really that great against quarterbacks. Like I said, third fewest, but they've had a pretty easy schedule. Faced Kenny Pickett and Brett Rippon in the last couple weeks, but only 2 quarterbacks have scored more than like 15 points against them. Austin Eckler, you're starting. Keenan Allen, you're starting. How do you feel? Who's the next best wide receiver in this game after Keenan Allen?
I think it's Reed.
Yeah.
And where is he for you?
40s.
In that range. He's exactly 40th for me in PPR.
Okay. Someone asked in the chat, Christian Watson or Curtis Samuel.
I'd go Watson there.
More upside.
Yeah, again, this is a team that really struggles. The Chargers really struggle against wide receivers. They give up a ton of big plays. The fourth most completions of 20 or more air yards, I believe. Fourth most completions of 20 or more yards. But that was the case last week with Pittsburgh, and Christian Watson didn't do anything. He is now 79% rostered, same as Romeo Doubs. All right, try to get away from them. Starter sit Luke Musgrave.
Bye week replacement.
Deep league option.
Yeah. Like if you're looking for 8, 9, 10 PPR points, I think he can get you close to that.
What about Parham or Musgrave if Everett's out?
Parham.
The golfer sandwich.
And do you guys really Jamie seems to really like Aaron Jones. Dave, how do you feel about him?
Top 15 running back. I agree. I think that he's clearly the lead back. It's not like a huge gap between him and AJ Dillon, but he's still that 1A, let's call it, in the Green Bay run offense. And the Chargers run defense hasn't been great. So I'm absolutely going to bank on Jones to have another opportunity to get 15 plus touches, and hopefully some of them come through the air and he ends up having a pretty good game.
It's funny because this was the case I was making for him last week, and he stunk, but he got a ton of work. You know, he had 17 touches at Pittsburgh, not a ton of work.
Much tougher defense, though.
Yeah, it's funny. The Chargers were giving up 3.6 yards per carry to running backs until they faced Detroit last week. And now it's 4.14 yards per carry to running backs. They actually had done a good job on the ground. They are terrible against running backs in the passing game. Third most receiving yards per game allowed to running backs. And he's had 5 to 6 targets in 4 straight games. All right. So start Aaron Jones and sit the DSTs, I assume.
Yep.
All right. Tampa Bay is at San Francisco. Stat of the game. We're talking about Rachaad White here. Only 3 running backs have scored more than 11.1 PPR fantasy points against the 49ers. That was Kyron Williams, who had a huge game, 28 points. Kareem Hunt and Joe Mixon. Mixon scored 20 points. Tony Pollard scored 10.4. James Conner scored 6.6. The Vikings running backs, the Steelers running backs, they were bad. Travis Etienne just scored 6.4 fantasy points against this San Francisco defense. Dave, let's bring it back to Aaron Jones. We start Aaron Jones over Rachaad White.
I would. I'm worried about Rachaad White. First of all, he really hasn't been an efficient runner to begin with. And now it's going to be even worse running against this defense. And yeah, I don't know how many carries he's going to end up getting in the game, maybe 10, because I assume that the Buccaneers will play from behind and throw a lot. And that's not a death sentence at all for Rachaad White. It could mean he gets 5 or 6 catches. He's been better as a pass catcher than a runner. But I think that there's just a little more upside with Aaron Jones than there is Rachaad White.
All right, would you guys start Rachaad White or any San Francisco wide receiver?
Yeah, I'd start both Debo and Ayuk over White.
I might have a 49er sandwich. I'm looking at my rankings just to double check.
Again, Dave, I have to correct you. That would be a Rachaad White sandwich.
Oh, yeah. Whatever. You and your sandwiches.
Listen, you're going to a deli at noon.
Of course, I don't order a rye bread sandwich.
What sandwich are you ordering? What are you ordering? You going any sandwich you want?
I'm going to get a Reuben.
Jamie?
Does he want to go home with you though?
Jeez. Jamie?
I would be going to Las Patas and getting a turkey roast beef sandwich.
Oh, please. You're getting a tuna salad. I have both 49ers receivers ahead of Rachaad White.
How about Rachaad White versus Chris Godwin?
I have White over Godwin.
White.
Okay, yeah, we don't really want to start Chris Godwin.
Baker
Baker maybe
flex worthy. Godwin and PPR.
Yeah,
I could see him getting, what kind of stat line would you have for Rachaad White as a pass catcher? 5 for 60, 6 for 60 in that
holy
range?
cow.
5 for 60.
Well, I mean, he has been doing that. I get
Maybe
that.
5
but
for 40,
still,
maybe at best.
Okay, well, if you think he's going to get 5 for 40, I think Godwin can get 5 for 55, 6 for 60.
Who knows?
Something in that range.
Yeah, I brought this up a lot last week. Tampa Bay, or San Francisco rather, they give up a lot of fantasy points to wide receivers. 24th against wide receivers.
Yeah, but Baker's going to be running for his life.
Right. You guys don't like Baker in this game.
No.
Not as much as we normally like Baker.
Okay. You're going to a bakery, right? No, just kidding. All right. Sit Baker. Purdy, we love. Purdy or Stroud. Purdy or Stroud?
Stroud.
I have Purdy one spot higher.
So someone in the chat said San Francisco has been vulnerable against pass catching running backs. Let's explore that because there is a little something to that. But I think they've really gotten a lot better. I think, like earlier in the year, they were giving up more production. So I'm going to say that they haven't really been that vulnerable against pass catching running backs.
I think, look, with what White has done, forget about the games where he's done well running the ball. It's more about the games where he's done as a pass catcher. That keeps him in the number 2 running back range.
Yes.
In non-PPR, he's a borderline starter at best. But in full PPR, he still has top 20 upside. He was a top 10 running back for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. And Evans is a must start.
Yes.
Evans is a must start. I think volume will be in his favor. The 49ers are 7th in defensive pass EPA against running backs this year. And top 10 in yards per catch allowed to running backs this year. 1 touchdown to running backs through the air this season.
I'm going to read some questions from the chat. Purdy or Howell or Lawrence?
That's the order.
I agree with the order.
Okay.
But 2 top 12 quarterbacks, though. Not named Lawrence.
We disagree on Howell this week.
All right. We have to pick 3 of this. Puka Nacua, Devontae. It says Adams, Puka, Adams, Waddle, and I thought that said Adams Wallet.
I did
Puka,
too.
Adams, Waddle, Dell, or Chris Godwin. Like Chris Godwin would not make the cut here. So
I'm sitting Adams and Godwin.
You get to I think that those are going to be the 3 that I pick as well.
All right. Start McCaffrey and Ayuk and Debo. Like, I don't know what the heck to make of Debo Samuel. He got 4 targets last week. He had the rushing touchdown. I think his snap. Do you? Because we have. Do you start him over Puka Nacua? Debo Samuel or Puka Nacua?
Puka.
Agreed.
But Debo and non-PPR.
Debo is going to be a number 2 fantasy receiver who you hope has an explosive play or 2.
George Kittle. George Kittle in 4 games where everyone's been healthy. He has he has 6, 1, 4, and 4 targets. But he has 2 huge games out of 4 and 2 terrible ones. Start or sit Kittle?
Start him.
Almost the same thing as Debo. You're hoping for an explosive play.
There's more upside, but much more downside than guys like Ferguson and Kmet.
Would you put Kmet in there? You have to put Evan Engram in there.
I put Ingram behind Kittle at this point.
I do too. No, that's what I'm saying.
But I would put Ferguson and Kmet ahead of Kittle because I think there's more consistent production coming from them.
Okay. I think that's pretty much it for this game. San Francisco's DST is top 3. Start them up. And we have a comment from Ryan. I'm behind on the live stream, but did anyone recommend the bad news backs for those 3 running backs?
There you go.
That's the winner right there, Ryan. Way to go, Ryan Vandenberg.
I did like the Fail Migos, though. That was not bad.
Fail Migos isn't bad. I like the bad news backs is terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Should we take a break or should we do another game? What do you think? Dave, I'll let you decide.
I could stand to take a break.
Wow.
Get a chance to stretch, walk around.
I am sorry, audience. I thought for sure he was going to say more fantasy football content, but nope, Dave hates you. We'll be right back. Seattle at the Rams. Here's a trend to watch. In their last 3 games, the Rams have allowed 9.2 yards per attempt to Kenny Pickett. That's terrible. 9.8 to Dak Prescott and 8.8 yards per attempt to Jordan Love. So this is a team that was supposed to have the worst secondary in football coming into the season. They've been surprisingly good against the pass. I think we're starting to see some cracks there for them. And they have really faced, and the point I bring up is they've actually been pretty good against wide receivers. I mean, they've faced Seattle. Think about the wide receivers on these teams. Seattle, San Francisco, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Philadelphia, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Green Bay. They have faced some terrific ones, and only 4 receivers have more than 63 yards against the Rams this year. But I think we might start it.
Did you really throw Green Bay in there?
I was just saying every team they've played. But the highlights are they face Seattle, San Francisco, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and Dallas, plus Michael Pittman. And they've held Marquise Brown, Ayuk, Higgins, Lockett, Pittman, Devontae Smith. All of those guys didn't even score 8 points against the Rams. So it's been a tough matchup for most wide receivers. But I think that might be turning a little bit here. So I asked you guys earlier how you felt about the wide receivers. If you'd like to expand on it here, Rams versus Seahawks. Jamie, how do you have it ranked?
Metcalf as a low-end number 2 receiver. Lockett not far behind him. And then Smith and Jigba as a number 3 receiver. I think, the thing that you look at with Metcalf and with Lockett is the targets have been fairly consistent. And so, you hope that they just continue to fall into production. Lockett feels like he's a little bit more touchdown dependent than Metcalf is because Metcalf just has not been finding the end zone. So, if you've been starting them, there's no reason to bench him for this matchup. And, you go back to week 1, you remember that game. The Rams held the ball forever.
Yeah.
Seattle really struggled in the opener, and it was a big surprise. And so we'll see if that's the case again, but different personnel. The run game was much better for the Rams that week with what Kyren Williams did, but that was without Cooper Kupp. And it was the breakout game for Puka Nacua, if you recall. So, you got to hope that Stafford's okay. If Stafford's okay, this could be a really fun game.
Okay. As far as Kupp goes, he's like top 10, I think, for you guys. So he's easy. Would you start Puka Nacua or Terry McLaurin?
McLaurin.
I have Nacua higher.
Would you start Puka Nacua or DJ Moore against the Lions?
Nacua.
I have Nacua 1 spot ahead of DJ Moore.
Puka Nacua or Gabe Davis?
Get out of here.
Puka Nacua or Devontae Smith at Kansas City?
Smith.
I'll take Smith.
All right. All right. Let's talk about the running backs. Well, let's talk real quick on Geno Smith. Start or sit?
Sit.
If we've got Lockett and Metcalf ranked around the top 30 range and Jackson Smith and Jigba as like a flex, then Geno should be higher. But I just feel like there are so many quarterbacks that have a more appealing outlook this week that I'd rather start them than Geno Smith. So I agree. I think he's a sit.
It's a very Spider-Man meme situation for both these teams because we like, and in some cases love, the receivers, but don't like the quarterbacks as fantasy options because the lack of touchdowns.
Right.
How many games have we seen this year where Nacua and Cooper Kupp have big PPR games and Stafford has 17 fantasy?
Well, they've only played 3 games together with Stafford, so it's not like there's a big sample size for the receivers.
I thought it was 4. Am I wrong?
Well, you factor in the game that Stafford left?
The Cowboys game, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. So moving on to now I think the running backs, right? All right, Ken Walker or Aaron I think I already asked you that. I'll do it again. Ken Walker or Aaron Jones?
Jones.
I'll take Walker.
All right,
I have Jones higher by 2 spots. I'll take Jones.
Are we confident in Ken Walker here? He's got 19 carries last week, but struggling a bit on the ground. What do you think?
I'm not outright benching Ken Walker, but if I have Achane coming back, for example,
Agreed.
Mostert, if not this, same situation, but like Mostert better.
Can I give you 2 more?
Sure.
Brian Robinson against the Giants.
Yep, good one.
Javonte Williams against Minnesota.
Yep, 2 good ones.
And Christian McCaffrey too.
You'd start over Ken Walker.
Yeah.
All of them. Even McCaffrey.
All right.
But I wouldn't start Singletary over him, for example, or Jerome Ford over him.
I'm right there with you. How about James Conner? One more.
I would start Walker over Conner.
That's how I have it. I've got Achane, Walker, Rashad White, James Conner.
All right, let's go. So one thing I've noticed is that over his last 3 games, he's got a percentage of carries for 0 or negative yards, 22.2% or higher in 3 straight games. And that's really bad. And it just was not the case earlier in the season. Now, 2 of those games only had 7 or 8 carries. So it's kind of like 2 games over the last 3, if you want to combine the Ravens and the Browns. But I think if you want to take the optimistic view on Ken Walker, it's this. He's had 2 terrible games recently. One of them, he came in banged up against the Browns. The next week, got blown out by the Ravens. That 8 carries. So you're talking about the Browns and the Ravens here, right? Then he gets back on track with, but that's what, like, last week was so concerning me because he's just not running the ball that well, but he did get the 19 carries.
Well, you just wonder if at some point they start to just continue to give Charbonnet more work.
Also that, yeah.
And that, to me, that's the biggest fear, is that Charbonnet looks good and is playing on not all obvious passing down situations, but he's playing on more passing down situations.
So the difference is that I don't think Charbonnet has take it to the house upside. Like, obviously, if there's a play where
he may not have the same upside as Walker, but he has that upside.
Right. But like, I think that Walker is just way more like the catch last week is proof of that. Like, he's got the potential. Any one play, he can break it for a big play.
Right. He summed it up, I think it was Wednesday show, when he said, you don't bench these type of players.
Yeah, I agree. Past 4 games for the Rams, they've allowed almost 4.5 yards per carry to running backs. Rush rate of 5+ yards for running backs is up to 42%. And that's against Arizona, Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Green Bay. Not exactly a who's who of run games. So they're giving up some numbers. Abe Lucas might be back at right tackle. That'll make that offensive line stronger. I'm gonna be optimistic with Kenneth Walker this week that he can have another couple of big plays.
Okay, and how about the Rams running backs? Any interest in Henderson or Freeman?
It's been a really good matchup. Seattle's really been bad against running backs lately.
Yes.
So I think Henderson still for me over Freeman. More of a flex than a must-start guy.
Yep.
But has to be more involved in the passing game. So if he can get to 3 to 4 catches, I think he'll have a decent opportunity here. You always wonder about situations like this where they know the quote-unquote starters coming back, how they perform. And so this could be Henderson's last shot to ever be a featured guy in the NFL. And so does he have that sort of, okay, let me go out with a bang type performance? I don't mind him.
I don't mind him either. Wrote about him in lineup decisions this week, so you can read up more on him. I think he has 7 targets in 3 games compared to 1 for Royce Freeman. And if this game's going to be a little bit of a shootout, and if the Seahawks are as bad against the pass as they were last week to running backs, then sure, he could have a decent game. I have him as a sit, but I don't have him ranked as a top 24 running back. That's why.
Would you start Jalen Warren or Darrell Henderson?
I would start Henderson over both Steelers running backs. There's much more upside with him than there is those guys this week against the Browns.
And I've got him behind both Steelers running backs because I think the Steelers running backs are going to get a lot of work because the Browns offense isn't going to do very much.
Seattle's DST is not really. We're not going to use them. So let's go to Chicago at Detroit. Stat of the game, the Bears against running backs. I don't think anyone's going to care about this, but something to keep an eye on. In their last 6 games, only Austin Eckler has scored more than 11.2 PPR fantasy points against the Bears. They've had a good run defense all year long, but you're just not going to care because Detroit runs on everyone. Justin Fields, last I checked, was outside the top 12 for everybody. I'll get the updated rankings here. He is 14th for Dave and Jamie and 13th for Heath. Would you start Justin Fields or Russell Wilson against the Vikings?
Fields.
Currently have Fields ahead of Russell Wilson.
Fields or Love?
Fields.
Same. They're back-to-back, though. Top 15 quarterbacks.
Fields.
Yeah, I had Fields over Burrow, for what that's worth.
Well, it's going to work out. Fields or
right?
Fields or who?
Kyler
or Fields.
Agreed.
All right.
Well, I mean, you made it the game of the week, so that might have to change.
The Bears running backs. What? Sum it up, Dave.
You're going to be taking a chance no matter what you do if Khalil Herbert plays. Herbert does have fresh legs, but I would imagine he will still be the 1B to Foreman's 1A, but Foreman's limited, and it's a tough matchup against Detroit, where I think they'll be trailing. Don't really love the potential game script for either of these running backs.
Start Darrell Henderson over a Bears running back?
Yes.
Yep.
Royce Freeman?
Nope.
I think that's too far.
What if Foreman doesn't play? Is that realistic right now that Foreman doesn't play, or are we just thinking?
I think the fact that he was limited is a good sign.
All right.
That he's trying to fight through it. But at this point, I would lean Herbert over Foreman.
And I think there's zero chance, as long as Foreman is okay, that he's going to go back to being inactive. Remember how the season started and he was inactive and they ran with Herbert and Roschon? I don't think I think that they can't do that anymore. I think they like what they've gotten out of Foreman. So it could be three-headed in that backfield that might not get a lot of work. And Justin Fields is back. You know he's going to run.
Yeah, true. Like or love DJ Moore?
Like.
I think you got to love him. I think the game script's going to be favorable for him. I think his numbers are better with Fields than they were with Bagent.
You think? That's a fact.
Well, I mean, it's especially the target numbers. I think Bagent's target numbers, 9 targets last week, and he still couldn't do anything. He's been close to scoring with Bagent. I think he will score with Fields.
My only concern would be is how healthy is his thumb for Fields. So like clearly he's healthy enough to play, but we still could get some off-target throws to DJ Moore while the targets will be there.
All right, would you start DJ Moore or Nico Collins?
Moore.
Agreed.
DJ Moore or Tank Dell?
Dell.
Tank Dell.
DJ Moore or Deebo Samuel?
Moore.
Moore in PPR.
All right. And Cole Kmet, you said earlier, Jamie, you would start him over, who the heck was it?
Kittle.
Both feel that way? Okay. Kmet or Ferguson?
Kmet.
Agreed.
Kmet or Ingram?
Kmet over Ingram. Kmet over
all those guys
Njoku.
over Ingram.
Yeah. Kmet over Conklin.
The Lions have had a very interesting season against tight ends because they don't give up a lot of big games tight ends. Andrews is the only one that's really done that. But they give up a lot of like 8-point games, 9-point games. It's like a lot of like little dink and dunk type of performances against them. So I'm curious to see how Kmet's stat line comes out. So I think there's a safe floor of about 9 PPR points, which puts you in the range of a top 12 guy. And then we've seen certainly the highs. The last 2 games that he played with a healthy Justin Fields were huge against Denver and Washington.
All right, let's take a look at the Lions now. And there's a pretty big difference in the Jared Goff rankings. Jamie has Jared Goff 6th. The Bears allow the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And Dave ranks Jared Goff 13th. So let's talk about that gap there. And Jamie, you're pro Goff here. So go for it.
He's at home. And every time he's at home, he has a big game. For the most part, only one stinker so far in his building this season. 2 games against the Bears as a quarterback at home. Over 22 fantasy points in both of those. You mentioned it. They're 6th worst against opposing quarterbacks. 21.6, I believe, is the number they give up per game on the season. I just think the Lions do whatever they want to do in this game. And Jared Goff would not be surprising if how the MVP race has gone, if he has another strong performance, if his name starts to get mentioned as an MVP for how the Lions season is going.
Dave?
I don't like being the anti-Jared Goff guy because I mostly agree with what Jamie's saying. I just don't know how much upside there is because I don't know how much he's going to have to do. A lot of the times when I've been a fan of Jared Goff, it's been in matchups where I think he's going to have to throw a lot. This is one of those games where I don't know if he's going to have to throw a lot. And I think the Lions can just cram the run down the throats of the Chicago Bears. And Jared Goff could have a pretty pedestrian game. I don't like saying he's a sit. I don't have him as a top 12 quarterback. I would start Brock Purdy ahead of him, Josh Dobbs ahead of him, Kyler Murray for now I have ahead of him. I think I'm going to keep it that way too. But I would start Goff over Fields. I would start him over Sam Howell, and I would start him over Russell Wilson.
I believe Sportsline has Goff 3rd this week.
Yeah, he's thrown 33 or more passes in all but 2 games. He threw 28 passes in a 14-point win, and he had a low pass attempt game in an 18-point win. So but he's also had games where they've had big margins of victory, and he has thrown a lot. And they average the second most plays per game in the NFL. So a lot of times they can do both. They can run the ball a lot, they can throw the ball a lot. Yeah. And there have been 5 quarterbacks who have scored 27 or more points against the Bears, and only 2 of them threw more than 33 passes. So you can be really great against them without that. So the other thing for Dave is that it's a great quarterback week, and some of the options ahead of Goff are really good. But no one's going to argue with you if you're starting Jared Goff. We'd certainly
I'm starting Jared Goff in one of my leagues, but it's a deeper league. So
yeah,
hope he comes through. I hope he has 3 touchdowns.
Great defense.
Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Who do you like better?
I'm going to say Gibbs.
Is it Jamie Freeze, Dave?
No way.
First time?
It's okay. He'll be back.
Wow.
See, we don't laugh at people when their internet connection. It's something beyond his control.
Jamie looks pissed.
As opposed to, look, Gibbs, I have him ranked top 5. It's kind of, I feel like I'm on a limb ranking him that high because he's sharing, because I don't know how many goal line opportunities he's going to get, but he's just so explosive. And we've talked about how bad this Bears defense is just in general. I don't think Tremaine Edmonds is going to come back. He's the middle of that defense. I think they're a better defense when Tremaine Edmonds is there at linebacker. But I love both. I have both of these running back. This is part of the reason why I've Goff 13th. I have both Lions running backs top 8 this week in PPR. Can't get away from either one. They're both RB1s.
Okay. Detroit wide receivers, just St. Brown, right?
Just Amon-Ra.
And start Sam Laporta. Are there any guys? Would you start Kincaid and McBride ahead of Laporta at this point?
I would start Kincaid and McBride over Laporta. I think he's another player that could be hurt by the run game that the Lions have. Fewer opportunities.
Anyone else that would be surprising?
No. He's 6th for me. Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson, Kincaid, McBride, Laporta.
All right.
Start him over Schultz.
Dallas is at Carolina. Stat of the game: the Dallas Cowboys allow the 2nd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. How do you feel about the slumping Adam Thielen?
Don't like him as much as I normally do. Don't like the production that we've seen the last couple of weeks. I have him as a wide receiver 2. I have him at 20th overall, and I can't say I'm going to commit to that even further just because the matchup is so tough. Are you interested in a deep league / dynasty league stash on the Carolina Panthers?
Sure.
Michael Strawn. You cannot spell his name like it sounds. It's spelled, there's a C in there. It's Strachan. Made a big play last week. This has been a Frank Reich guy for a while. No one else in the passing game has really stepped up and done anything other than Thielen. They need to find somebody. And I wonder if Strawn could be that guy. This is mega deep league. I'm in a 14-team triple flex. That's the league where I'm starting Goff in. I am considering dropping a player who I just don't have much faith in to stash Strawn and see what happens.
Oh, would you start Adam Thielen or DJ Moore this week, Dave?
Moore over Thielen. Here's where I'm struggling, and you can tell me who you would start in these games.
Okay.
Thielen or Lockett. And I have Lockett as my favorite Seahawks receiver.
I'd start Thielen.
Okay. I have it ranked that way. These are all guys I have Thielen ranked over, but I'm shaky with it. Christian Kirk.
Kirk.
Yeah, I think I might go with Kirk too. And I think I might go with Hollywood Brown as well over Thielen.
In the game of the week, I think I go Thielen.
The game of the week.
I'd go Thielen there. This is a Jobu week for Thielen. I'm going to really start downgrading.
No, this should not be the Jobu week for Thielen. If he has Dallas, this is a tough matchup.
But if he has another bad game, then
Tennessee next week. That's
no one's going to have confidence in him. No one's
hold on. After this week, it's Tennessee and Tampa Bay on the road, and then at New Orleans. 3 straight games on the road for Carolina. Oh, good luck getting that second win. But I think that those 2 games are like the Jobu weeks for Thielen.
Dave, he just had
I know what he's
yards at Chicago.
Yeah, I know.
Before that, he had 5 for 29 against the Colts. So it's not like it's just been a matchups thing here. He Bryce Young has been horrible.
I'm moving him down.
All right. I mean, I'm just saying, if he struggles again this week, even if it is understandable, no one's going to have confidence next week when there's no team on bye, in Adam Thielen.
Fair point. The week after, though, at Tampa Bay, 6
It
teams on
depends.
bye.
If he has 4 straight bad games, well, let's revisit it then. All right. So, are you worried at all about Dak Prescott with the Panthers? Seeing the 3rd fewest pass attempts, allowing the 6th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks.
No, because they are struggling to run the football. They might try and get that run game going this week, but the vibe that I spent a lot of time listening in on the coaches' press conferences this week, and the vibe that I got is that they really love where they're at with their passing game. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is doing incredible things. They're going to lean on him. They spoke glowingly about Brandon Cooks. There's a quote that I could probably call up if you gave me 15 seconds about what they had to say about how Brandon Cooks contributed last week, and that's the world they want to live in, something to that effect when it comes to their passing game. And Pollard's not getting it done. They need to eventually turn to Dowdle and see what he can do long term. Dowdle was the more explosive back last week. I just think this offense is going to revolve around Dak until further notice.
Okay, and all right, we got to talk about Pollard here. So, what are you expecting this week?
RB2 by default. I'm hoping he scores. I'm hoping he can average 4 yards per carry on 15 carries.
I mean, like they keep having these blowout games, and he just never gets that many carries. He
did last week.
Well, he got 15. That's not that many.
That's the number that I think you've got to kind of hope for.
Yeah. Well, one thing he doesn't really get in these blowout wins are catches. If it's a competitive game, he's probably going to be more involved in the passing game. Here are his catches in their big lopsided wins: 2 against the Giants, which nobody catches pass against the Giants; 7 against the Jets; 3 against New England; 1 against the Rams; 0 against the Giants last week. So that's just something that, whatever it is, he just doesn't catch that many passes typically in these blowout wins. All right, so let's go through the rankings here. Tony Pollard or Pacheco against the Eagles.
Pollard over Pacheco.
Swift against the Chiefs.
Swift.
James Conner or Tony Pollard.
I have Conner 2 spots ahead of Tony Pollard.
Adam Thielen or Tony Pollard.
Pollard over Thielen, especially if it's non-PPR.
All right, Puka Nacua or Tony Pollard.
Puka and PPR. I think I'll probably. Will I say Puka and non-PPR? I don't think I will. I think I'll chance it with Pollard and non-PPR.
All right, Jake Ferguson is a low-end starter in that Cole Kmet range. Yep. Ferguson or Dalton Schultz or Ferguson this week.
Schultz over Fergie.
All right, sit Bryce Young, sit Chuba Hubbard, right? Sit Chuba Hubbard.
Yes, please do your best to.
We talked about Adam Thielen and start the Cowboys DST. Our last game is the Giants at the Commanders. Stat of the game number 1. It's the Giants at Washington. There is not a single fantasy relevant player with the last name Washington.
Hasn't been that way for a while. James Washington.
Yeah.
George Washington.
When I control F in my document, I can't do it for Dallas if I'm trying to find the Dallas game, because I'll find Dallas Goedert 15 times before I find the Dallas game. But Washington, there's not a single Washington in my notes. And there's like thousands of words in my notes.
Producer Zach Brook is suggesting Nate Washington.
Yeah, no. I have 17,000 words in this document and only one Washington. Anyway, stat of the game number 2. Here are the carries for Brian Robinson in the 4 wins for the Commanders. Well, not game by game, but 18 or more carries in 3 of the 4 wins. He had 10 carries against the Falcons when the Commanders had the ball for 23 minutes and 37 seconds and ran 50 plays. So while he has had, I think, 10 or fewer carries in 5 of their last 6 games, when they win, 18 or more carries in 3 of 4 games. I hope that continues. Would you start Brian Robinson over Barkley and or Pollard?
The answer is yes, I would. I think he's a top 10 running back this week, even in full PPR. I think he's got a great opportunity to score. I think he can have some breakaway runs. This Giants defense just has not been great. I don't care if they did a good job of slowing down Tony Pollard last week. Pollard has been slow every week. And this is a Commanders team. Listen, they've been throwing the ball like crazy week after week. I think a lot of it's because they've had to, not necessarily because they've wanted to. I could be wrong on this. They could end up just throwing like crazy and leaning on Sam Howell, regardless of the matchup. But I think that this is the time where they try and get their run game going and continue to evaluate. They've evaluated Howell. They like him long-term. I think they're evaluating Brian Robinson now. And I think that this could be a game he sees 20 touches.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants always play the Commanders tough, and they usually beat the Commanders. So I feel like I picked the Giants +9. Obviously, I don't think they're going to win, but I do think that this game could be closer, and it won't just be a blowout, which matters for game script here. Obviously, for the Giants, Barkley's the only player that you're considering starting. He's a number 2 running back for everybody, but you are a lot lower on Howell. Like you have him 16th, I think, and Heath has him 4th.
Heath is expecting that volume. So Heath and I view Howell differently in that regard. We think the game script is going to be positive for Howell and that he'll throw, and it's entirely possible. And even though he's 16th, it doesn't mean that I hate him. There's just a lot of quarterbacks I think have more upside.
I wonder if Gibson does not play, who takes on his role?
Chris Rodriguez.
You think Robinson gets more catches, or you think
I don't know if it's necessarily more catches for Robinson, but I think you'll see the rookie from Kentucky get a few more snaps, and he can catch a little bit too. So maybe there's 1 or 2 catches for him.
And how do you feel about? We know we like McLaurin this week, but how do you feel about Dotson and Samuel?
How do you trust those guys after what happened last week? Another donut for Dotson. I feel terrible about it because I thought I bought in. I absolutely bought in. But how can I root for Dotson to bounce back this week when I'm not expecting the quarterback to throw a ton? And even if he does throw a ton, it might be a 0 catch game for Dotson. So he's back to the bench.
Okay. And then Logan Thomas, also in that low
end starting tight end, but he's behind Kmet. He's behind Ferguson. For me, he's behind Njoku, but that one's close.
How about Tyler Conklin or Logan Thomas?
I believe I have Conklin a spot higher.
You do. You do.
I do.
Like or love the Commanders DST?
Okay, I'm supposed to love them because they're taking on the Giants, but this isn't that great of a defense. Like after they traded away their 2 best pass rushers, another one of their pass rushers got hurt last week. I don't have the updated stat on whether or not he's playing. I guess that's not a stat. Let me look it up.
Out of the game. Yeah, I like them. I mean, yeah.
I think you have to because they're going up against the Giants. But if you're expecting the Giants to keep it close, then is it going to be close in a low-scoring game? That's not good for anybody. If you think it's going to be close to a high-scoring game, that's not good for the Commanders' defense.
Like every other time any team faces the Giants, I think there's going to be a lot of sacks. So
okay, well, all right. So James Smith-Williams was their best pass rusher after the trades of Sweat and Chase Young. He's got a hamstring injury. He didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. If he's out, their best pass rusher is somebody named Casey Toohill, who's got some potential. But I even with the Giants' offensive line being what it is, I wonder if it's going to give DeVito a little bit more time. Maybe
last
DeVito
question.
Actually make some plays.
Yeah, DeVito. Last question for you, Dave. Brian Robinson versus the Dolphins running backs. How do you rank it?
I thought you were going to ask me Robinson versus Pacheco and then hit the music on me. That's what you should have done, you knucklehead. Robinson, I think I actually have him ahead of both Dolphins running backs.
Okay, and then Barkley versus the Dolphins running backs.
I have Barkley currently ahead of Achane right now. I don't know if I'm sticking with that.
Okay. All right. I think, again, Barkley was so bad last week because
Achane has more upside. I can't stick with Barkley over Achane.
They lost by 32 points last week, but you look at the games before that, he scored 13.8 to 18.8 points in 4 straight games. He scored 14.3 points with DeVito for basically the entire game at Las Vegas. He scored 15.8 fantasy points against the Jets with Tyrod Taylor and DeVito splitting there. I know he had 36 carries in that game, but don't react too strongly to the worst game script, the worst game of the Cowboys games. He's been horrible twice against the Cowboys. He's been good every other week. All right. That's it for today's show. We thank you. We'll talk to you on the mailbag, everybody. See you later.